Princess Lyra stood at the center of the high hall, her hands hidden inside long silver sleeves so no one would see them shaking. The hall was beautiful, tall crystal pillars, glowing floors and banners that shimmered like trapped starlight. But to her, it felt like a cage made of mirrors, forcing her to look at what the Empire believed she was: a failure. The council members sat in a crescent shape above her, each wearing masks of control and superiority. They looked down at her the way someone might look at a broken tool, annoyed, disappointed, and ready to discard it. Lyra had grown used to their cold stares, but today they felt sharper, like they were preparing to cut her away completely. She kept her posture straight. Her mother had once told her, a princess must never let others see her wounded heart. Lyra tried to remember how her mother used to hold her hands when she was a child, warm and gentle. But the warmth had faded long ago. The Empire did not remember gentle things. A counselor cleared his throat. "Princess Lyra of House," he announced in a tone so stiff it sounded like metal bending, "the matter of your condition must be addressed." Condition, the word struck her like a stone. Another counselor leaned forward. His eyes were bright with the kind of fake sympathy that hurt more than cruelty. "You have reached adulthood, and yet no signs, not a single indication of royal fertility." And the healers have all agreed. A third counselor tapped his long fingers against the armrest. "It is irreversible." Lyra felt a familiar ache inside her chest. She had known this discussion would come eventually. She had felt it approaching like a storm that others pretended not to see. She bowed her head slightly. "I understand my limitation," she said softly. "Limitation," one counselor scoffed. "It is an embarrassment." Another added, "The royal line depends on continuation. A princess who cannot continue it is." "Useless," whispered someone in the back. The word echoed in her mind. She tried not to let her face show anything. Her fingers clasped the edges of her sleeves. The Supreme Chancellor rose, towering above her. His armor-like robe cast a long shadow over the floor. "Princess Lyra, your role in the Empire was to provide heirs. You cannot." His voice carried no malice, only cold logic. "And thus we must determine a new purpose for you." She held her breath. A new purpose. The words felt heavy, dangerous. Then the council members began to speak rapidly, like vultures picking apart a story before the prey was even dead. "Perhaps send her to a research outpost." No, too expensive." "Place her on a diplomatic team." What would she contribute?" Another counselor laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Give her to the humans. They adore strange things. They will admire her useless beauty." Some chuckled. Others pretended not to hear but did nothing to stop it. Lyra felt a flash of humiliation burn through her chest, but she stayed still. She had been taught that silence was safer than defending herself. The Chancellor lifted a hand, silencing the room. "The humans recently requested cultural exchange. We will send Lyra as a diplomatic gift." A gift. A joke. An object passed away to another species, because her own no longer wanted her. Her throat tightened. "If that is what the Empire wishes," she murmured. "It is," the Chancellor replied without hesitation. "Your presence here only reminds the citizens of imperfection, but among humans your appearance will be entertaining. Perhaps they will find you fascinating. At least there you will serve some purpose." The entire hall blurred for a moment, though she kept her expression neutral. On the shimmering walls around her, she saw dozens of reflections of herself: silver eyes, pale skin, delicate features. Beautiful but empty. That was how the Empire saw her. A disappointment wrapped in royal silk. Her escort approached from behind, tall armored guards with emotionless faces. "Princess Lyra, you will be escorted to the transport ship immediately." She nodded once, unable to trust her voice. As she walked out of the hall, each step echoed like a farewell. No one followed, no one stopped her, no one said goodbye. Outside, the air was cold against her skin. She paused for a moment, looking up at the glowing sky of her. She had grown up dreaming under those lights. She had imagined a future filled with love, children, and purpose. But the Empire had no space for broken dreams. When the transport door closed behind her and the engines roared to life, Lyra placed a hand on the cold metal wall and whispered to herself, barely audible, "I am more than what they say." She didn't know if she believed it yet. But the journey to Earth had begun. And her real story, far away from cruelty and expectations, was waiting for her in a small blue world she had never seen. The transport ship shuddered as it entered Earth's thin atmosphere. Lyra had never seen a sky like this, wide and endless, stretching farther than any dome she had known. The air smelled strange, wet, earthy, full of things growing and alive. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of curiosity rather than fear. When the ship finally landed, she was met not by soldiers in uniform, but by a man with calm eyes and an open expression. Carter. He looked ordinary, clothes worn, hair slightly messy, hands that had clearly worked hard. There was no pomp, no ceremony. Yet the way he simply said, "Come on, let's get you inside," made her chest loosen in a way she hadn't realized was possible. Inside his home, the warmth hit her first. A small fireplace crackled and sunlight spilled through dusty windows. It was far from the crystal halls of palaces, far from the cold perfection of her home, but it was alive. Even the crooked floorboards seemed to have character, moving slightly under her weight, reminding her that nothing here pretended to be flawless. Gestured to a small chair. "Sit, I'll make tea." Lyra hesitated. Tea. She had spent her life drinking synthesized nutrients, precise and calculated for efficiency. Yet the idea of a hot cup, something simple and human, made her lips curve in a small smile. She sat, feeling the fabric of the chair soft against her legs. For the first time, she didn't feel like a visitor or a joke. She felt human. Days passed in a rhythm she had never experienced. She helped in the small garden outside. Earth plants were delicate, unpredictable, stubborn in their growth. She watched roots push through soil, watched tiny buds bloom despite everything. It reminded her of herself, fragile yet stubborn. Never criticized her mistakes when planting or watering. He simply laughed softly when a seed fell over or when she watered too much. That laughter, so gentle and free, settled in her chest like sunlight. Humans were different they did not demand perfection. They did not calculate every move for maximum result. They made mistakes and they celebrated them or at least accepted them. Watching navigate his small life, bills, neighbors, food, Lyra realized that purpose didn't have to come from status or bloodline. It could be simple. It could be chosen. Sometimes in the evenings they walked to the market together. Lyra marveled at the colors, red tomatoes, golden bread, silver fish glinting in ice. She had seen markets before, but marketplaces were cold, ordered, designed for efficiency. Here, life felt chaotic, alive, unpredictable. Children ran around, dogs barked, music spilled from a street corner. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but her lips had forgotten how, held her hand gently. "It's okay," he said. "You can laugh if you want." One evening, as a soft rain tapped against the roof, Lyra sat by the window watching drops slide across glass. Joined her, carrying 2 mugs of steaming tea. He handed her one and she accepted it without thinking. They sat in silence. No one judged her. No one expected her to perform or please. She could simply exist. "Do you miss your home?" asked quietly. Lyra closed her eyes, yes and no. She missed the sky of her planet, the soft hum of energy flowing through crystal halls, but she had never truly felt alive there. Everything had been rules, expectations, constant reminders of what she could not do. Here, she felt possibility. She felt hope. "I never thought I would find a place like this," she admitted. "A home that does not care if I am perfect or not." Smiled softly. Maybe that's the best kind of home. Night after night, Lyra felt something she had never allowed herself to feel, trust. She shared small things about her life, the way the stars on shine, the hum of her palace floors, the loneliness behind all that beauty. listened, never interrupting, never judging. And in listening, he gave her something the Empire had her all her life: respect. And slowly, imperceptibly, Lyra began to change. She laughed more, moved more freely, and started to notice the tiny joys humans often overlooked: the smell of wet earth, the warmth of a fire, the sound of laughter without reason. She felt herself opening to the world, and more frighteningly, opening to who had become a quiet, steady presence in her life. She still remembered the cruelty that had sent her here. But for the first time, that memory no longer felt like a chain. It felt like a shadow behind her, one she could acknowledge but no longer had to follow. In the soft glow of the small home, surrounded by the sounds of human life and simple comfort, Lyra felt something extraordinary. For the first time, she felt at peace. And for the first time, she believed that maybe, even someone abandoned by an empire, could belong somewhere with someone without conditions, without judgment. Her exile had begun as a cruel joke, but here, on a small planet far from stars she once called home, it was slowly transforming into something else, a life worth living. Even in the quiet safety of home, Lyra could not escape the weight of her past. The Empire's words haunted her: useless, infertile, discarded. At night, when the fire had burned low and slept quietly beside her, she stared at the ceiling and felt the old ache return, deep and cold. The humans around her were kind, gentle, unpredictable. But could kindness erase decades of being told she was nothing? One evening, Lyra walked to the edge of the garden. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the soil soft and fragrant. She knelt and let her fingers dig into the mud, feeling the earth press against her hands. There was life here, stubborn and unplanned. Tiny sprouts fought their way through wet soil, and in them she saw something she had not felt in a long time: possibility. Joined her silently, placing his hand over hers. She flinched at first, the instinct of self-protection buried deep inside her, but then she relaxed. "You don't have to be perfect here," he said softly. "You never did." "I have always been expected to be perfect," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And yet I was never enough. Everywhere I go, I feel the emptiness inside me, like a shadow that follows no matter what I do." Knelt beside her. "You are more than what they say, more than any empire's rules." His eyes were steady, warm, and honest. "And you don't have to carry their judgment anymore." For a moment, Lyra let herself believe it. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. But the shadow of doubt never fully disappeared. She had survived her empire's cruelty, but could she survive this new life? Could she truly belong here, in a world that seemed so fragile and alive, where mistakes were allowed and love was offered freely? The next day, the first reminder of her past arrived unexpectedly. A human diplomat, curious about the alien princess, asked invasive questions about her bloodline, her purpose, and her ability to continue her species. Lyra answered politely at first, but the words scratched at old wounds, tearing open the embarrassment and fear she had tried to bury. Noticed her tension immediately. He stepped forward, a quiet barrier between her and the intrusive questions. "Enough," he said firmly. "She doesn't have to answer you." Lyra's eyes widened at his protective stance. Humans did not always fight for her, did. It was a small thing, but it made her chest swell with a warmth she had not felt in years. No one had ever stood up for her so naturally, so without expectation. That evening they sat together, silent but connected. Lyra finally spoke. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Even here I feel like something is missing. I am afraid that one day I will be told I do not belong anywhere, that even this kindness can disappear." Held her hands tightly. "Fear is normal, but it does not define you. You choose your home, you choose who you trust, and you choose to keep moving forward." For the first time, Lyra understood the meaning of choice. She had never been allowed one. Her life had been dictated by bloodline, duty, and the expectations of people who never looked at her as a person. But here, she could define herself. She could decide what mattered. Days turned into weeks. and slowly the shadow within her began to lift. She learned human habits, cooking, laughing, small conversations that held no pressure. She helped neighbors, tended the garden, and even began to enjoy the quiet, ordinary chaos of life. Every small act of independence, every laugh shared with, became a small victory against the years of shame and isolation. Then one afternoon, while planting new seeds, Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest, a flutter she did not understand. She paused, hand over her heart, and stared at the soil beneath her. Could it be? No, that was impossible. She had been told she could never. Noticed her sudden stillness. What is it? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. Something is changing inside me, something I thought could never happen. Placed a hand on her shoulder. Whatever it is, we face it together. Lyra looked into his eyes and saw unwavering trust and strength. It was terrifying, yet comforting. The idea that she could feel hope again, that the impossible might exist for her, was both thrilling and frightening. That night she stared at the stars beyond the human sky and whispered to herself, maybe my story is not over. Maybe this is the beginning of something I was never allowed to have. And somewhere in the quiet of the earth, under the shelter of a small home and the presence of someone who truly cared, Princess Lyra began to believe that even someone discarded by an empire could still find life, purpose, and hope. The shadow of the past had not vanished completely, but for the first time she felt strong enough to walk forward, step by step, into a future of her own choosing. Weeks passed, and life had settled into a quiet rhythm for Lyra, and mornings were spent tending the garden, afternoons wandering the nearby fields, and evenings in the warm comfort of small home. Lyra had grown accustomed to the steady heartbeat of human life, the way it ebbed and flowed, full of unpredictability yet grounded in simple routines. For the first time, she felt that perhaps she could belong somewhere without conditions, without expectations. But then came the strange feelings. At first they were subtle, a fluttering warmth in her chest, sudden waves of dizziness, an unexplained fatigue that made her long for sleep even after restful nights. She ignored them at first, blaming the change of atmosphere or unfamiliar earth foods. She did not want to believe that something so impossible could be happening. Noticed the shifts. He was quiet, attentive, his gaze soft and careful. "You've been looking tired," he said one evening as they sat in the dim glow of the fireplace. "Are you feeling all right?" Lyra shook her head, forcing a small smile. "I am fine," she whispered, but the words felt hollow even to her own ears. She had lived her entire life told that she could never carry life, that she would never create an heir. And now, deep inside, she felt something stirring that contradicted everything she had ever believed. The next day she fainted in the garden while watering seedlings. Caught her just in time, lowering her to the soft earth. His face, full of worry, drew a tremor of fear from her. "Lyra, what's happening? Talk to me." She struggled to sit up, shaking her head. I don't know." Her voice was small, trembling. Her mind raced. This could not be happening. The doctors on had been clear. She was infertile. It was not just unlikely, it was impossible. Refused to accept uncertainty. He drove her to the nearest hospital, holding her hand the entire way. The humans there were unfamiliar with her alien biology, but their determination was human in itself, persistent, curious, and compassionate. They ran tests, scanned her in ways she had never experienced. When the results appeared on the screen, even the doctors were stunned. "She's pregnant," one said, voice catching. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. Her chest tightened. The word echoed in her mind, impossible yet undeniable. "That cannot be," she whispered. I am infertile. I cannot, I." Took both her hands in his, grounding her. "Lyra, whatever happens, we face this together. You are not alone." His voice was steady, filled with a quiet certainty she had never known. Tears spilled down her cheeks, not of fear, but of something entirely new, hope. For decades, the Empire had told her she was nothing, a failure, a burden. Now, against all odds, the universe had given her life, and within her a new life had begun. The days that followed were a mixture of awe and careful caution. Lyra had never felt her body respond this way before. Every flutter, every subtle change, reminded her that she carried something miraculous. It was not just a child. It was proof that the impossible could exist, that life could bloom even where it was. Became her quiet protector and guide. He researched everything, prepared meals, made sure she rested, and never allowed her to feel alone in a body that suddenly felt foreign to her. He never questioned her worth, never reminded her of the past. He simply offered care, respect, and unwavering support. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the hills, Lyra rested her head against his shoulder. Why would your world allow this?" she asked softly. "I was supposed to be nothing, a joke, discarded by my own people. And now there is life inside me." Held her close, feeling her trembling. "Maybe because you were always more than what they said. Maybe because life refuses to follow rules sometimes. And maybe because you deserve this." Her tears fell freely this time, mingling with relief, disbelief, and joy. The child within her was a miracle, proof that humanity's compassion and unpredictability could challenge even the harshest logic of the empire. It was something her people had never understood, that worth could come from love, not bloodlines. For the first time in her life, Lyra allowed herself to dream, not of perfection, of duty, or of approval, but of a future she could shape with her own hands. A future where she could be loved and where she could love in return. As night fell and the stars shimmered faintly through the human sky, Lyra whispered to the life growing inside her, "I will protect you. I will give you everything I never had. And maybe together, we can show the galaxy what it truly means to be strong." And in that quiet room, under the soft glow of human lights, the impossible had become real. Princess Lyra, who had been discarded by her empire as infertile and worthless, had found something far greater: hope, love, and a miracle that would change everything. Across the galaxy, news traveled faster than any shuttle. The council, which had once discarded Princess Lyra as useless, now trembled with disbelief. The reports came in from human diplomats, scanners, and communications. They could not ignore it. Their infertile princess, sent as a joke, had conceived a child with a human. The chamber erupted in chaos. Voices rose, clashing with anger, fear, and confusion. "Impossible," one counselor shouted. "It cannot be," another added. "This is contamination. The child defiles the royal bloodline." The supreme chancellor, tall and stern, slammed his fist on the gleaming floor. "No, we will not allow this. Princess Lyra will return and the child will be secured for the Empire's study. No one can defy us." Lyra, unaware of the storm brewing light years away, spent her days quietly preparing for the child. She felt its gentle movements inside her, a soft pulse of life that she could almost hear in the silence. Every heartbeat reminded her that she was not defined by the Empire's cruelty. She was more. She carried life. And for the first time, she felt a strength that was entirely her own. Noticed her growing apprehension before she said a word. "Something worries you," he said one morning as they walked through a sunlit field. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers and birds circled overhead, but Lyra's mind was elsewhere. "They will come for the child," she said softly, her voice barely above the breeze. "Though they cannot accept what we have created, they will send fleets. They will take it by force if they can." Stopped and took her hands in his. His eyes, steady and unwavering, met hers. "Then we will face them together. You are not alone in this." Fear and hope mingled in her chest. She had never imagined such support, such fierce loyalty from someone outside her world. Humans had taught her care and trust, but now had shown her courage, true courage, the kind that could stand against empires. Days later, the sky darkened as unknown ships appeared on the horizon. Massive, sleek, and gleaming with authority, the fleet descended toward Earth. It was not diplomacy that they brought, it was command. Soldiers armed with energy weapons and authority, landing near the small town where Lyra and had begun their quiet life. The townspeople scattered in panic, but Lyra did not run. She stood with beside her, her silver skin gleaming faintly under the alien sunlight. "They will not take the child," she said, voice firm and cold. "Whatever happens, I will protect it." The commander, tall and imposing, stepped forward. "Princess Lyra," he said, voice echoing like metal, "return with us. The child belongs to the Empire. You are summoned." "I am not yours," Lyra replied, straightening her spine. "I am not property, and this child is not an object for your pride or study. You will not have it." The commander's expression hardened. "You will obey, or there will be consequences." Placed a hand on her shoulder. "You will not face them alone," he said quietly, a calm strength in his tone. Lyra felt a surge of warmth. She had known fear before, fear that made her small and silent, but now fear had a companion, courage. And courage had a name: Carter. The first soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. Lyra's pulse raced, but she refused to step back. She drew a slow breath, letting the energy she had never known she possessed rise within her. A faint glow began to shimmer from her chest, small at first but undeniable. The soldiers froze. His voice was soft but firm. "Leave her. You will not touch this family." The commander scoffed, but the glow from Lyra's chest intensified, pulsing like a heartbeat that belonged to no one but her. She realized then that carrying life had awakened something dormant inside her, a strength they had never taught her, a power born of hope, love, and survival. The soldiers faltered. Their authority could not command the impossible, and Lyra, once discarded as nothing, stood taller than any empire's fear. As they retreated to their ships, the commander's glare promised that this was far from over. Lyra knew the galaxy would watch her next moves closely, but for the first time she felt unshakable. She would not allow the past, the cruelty, or the fear to take her child. Wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "They underestimate you," he said softly, "and now they will learn that humans and those who fight beside them do not give up." Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the baby stir inside her, and whispered, "Then we will show them. We will show them all what it means to fight for life." And for the first time in her life, the princess who had been sent away as a joke realized that the real power was not in bloodlines or empires. It was in the courage to protect what she loved, no matter the odds. The soldiers had landed in force, their sleek ships cutting through the sky like silver blades. The town trembled beneath their presence, but Lyra did not flinch. She stood beside, her hands resting gently on her growing belly, and felt a strength she had never known. The child inside her stirred, and with it, a courage that burned brighter than fear. The commander stepped forward, his armor gleaming and voice sharp. "Princess Lyra," he said, "you will return with us immediately. The child belongs to the Empire. You will obey." Lyra lifted her head, silver eyes flashing with resolve. "No," she said simply, "I will not obey. I am not your property, and this child is not yours to take." A murmur ran through the soldiers. They had expected compliance, or at least fear. They had expected weakness, but Lyra radiated neither. She radiated authority, the kind that did not demand obedience, it commanded respect. Stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "They will not take her," he said firmly. "We fight together." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You cannot hope to resist. You are alone." Alone. The word echoed in Lyra's mind, but she shook it off. She was not alone. She had the child inside her, and the lessons of humanity she had learned in every quiet moment, lessons of courage, love, and resilience. The first soldiers moved forward, weapons raised. Lyra took a slow breath. The blue glow inside her chest pulsed, growing stronger. She had never known it could awaken like this, but now she understood. The life she carried was not just a child, it was power, a spark of hope, a symbol of defiance. Energy flowed through her, crackling and alive, and when she extended her hands, the soldiers were thrown back, their weapons deactivated by the invisible force. The ground trembled beneath them, and even the commander stepped back, alarm flashing in his eyes. "You will not touch this family," said, standing firmly beside her. His voice carried calm strength, the unshakable certainty of someone who refused to bow. The commander tried to speak again, but Lyra's glow flared brighter. She felt the warmth of her child, the pulse of life that gave her power she had never imagined. She could feel her own worth reflected in that tiny being growing inside her. "Leave," she said, voice ringing with authority, "or face the consequences of underestimating me." The soldiers faltered, then retreated to their ships, shocked and disoriented. The commander's glare promised this was not over, but Lyra no longer feared him. She had faced judgment, abandonment, and ridicule her entire life, and survived. This empire, which had cast her aside as useless, could not dictate her future. Wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You are incredible," he whispered. "They will learn that humans and those who stand with them do not give up." Lyra smiled softly, feeling the baby kick inside her. "They will learn that life cannot be controlled by fear or tradition," she replied. "They will learn that love is stronger than their rules, stronger than their empire." For the first time in her life she felt free. Free from judgment, free from expectation, free from the cruel chains of her past. She was a princess, yes, but not one defined by bloodlines or duty. She was defined by courage, compassion, and the power to protect the life she carried. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet, Lyra stood tall. The small town around her was quiet again, the humans who remained watching with awe and curiosity. She had fought not just for herself, but for a new future, one where the child she carried would be free from the prejudices of the past. And in that quiet, breathtaking moment, she realized the truth. The Empire had tried to discard her as nothing, but she had returned stronger, wiser, and full of purpose. She would not allow anyone, no council, no commander, no rule, to tell her what she could or could not be. Her child stirred again, and she placed a hand on her belly. "You are already powerful," she whispered. "And together, we will show the galaxy what it means to be alive, to fight for what matters, and to create a future worth living." Squeezed her hand, a silent promise of unwavering support. "We are ready," he said. Lyra nodded, her silver hair catching the last rays of the setting sun. The Empire had underestimated her once, but it would never again. She had chosen her own destiny, and nothing, not even the weight of a galaxy, could take it away. And so, under the human sky, with the child of two worlds growing inside her, Princess Lyra stood unbroken, defiant, and more alive than she had ever been. The past had tried to define her, the Empire had tried to control her, but she had chosen a new path. Her life, her child, and her heart belonged to her alone. And in that choice she had become unstoppable. The night was calm, almost serene, though the tension of the past weeks lingered like a shadow over the small home. Lyra sat in a chair, breathing slowly, hands resting on her rounded belly. The child inside her shifted gently, as if sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Stayed close, quiet but vigilant, his hand never leaving hers. The fleets had retreated, their threat still hovering across the galaxy, but here, in this human world, Lyra had found something far more valuable: safety, love, and the courage to shape her own life. She had stood against the Empire, faced judgment, and claimed her destiny. And now she was about to witness the most miraculous moment of all. As dawn broke, a soft golden light filled the room. Lyra's breathing quickened. The child's movements grew stronger, more insistent. Helped her to the bed, his eyes filled with a mixture of awe and protective concern. "You're doing incredible," he whispered. "We'll face this together every step." Tears pricked at Lyra's eyes. She had dreamed of motherhood her entire life, but had been told repeatedly it was impossible. Now, the impossible was happening in her arms, in her body, and it felt both terrifying and overwhelmingly beautiful. She gripped his hand tightly, drawing strength from the human who had become her anchor. Hours passed in a mixture of pain, hope, and determination. Lyra focused on the life inside her, feeling each movement, each tiny kick, as if it were a heartbeat syncing with her own. Murmured encouragements, soothing words, and reminders that she was not alone. Every word, every touch grounded her, giving her courage she did not know she possessed. Finally, with one last effort, the room was filled with a sound Lyra had never imagined she would hear. The cry of a newborn. It was soft, yet powerful, ringing with life and defiance against every expectation the universe had ever placed upon her. Held the child first, cradling the tiny form gently. The baby's skin shimmered faintly with a soft luminescence, a gift of the lineage, yet the warmth of humanity flowed in every feature. Eyes filled with tears, a raw mixture of love, pride, and disbelief. "They didn't see this coming," he whispered. Lyra reached for the child, trembling, and held it close. She felt the delicate pulse of life against her chest and realized with overwhelming emotion that she had not only survived her empire's cruelty but had triumphed in a way no one could have predicted. The child was perfect, not because of bloodlines or duty, but because it was loved, cherished, and fiercely protected. "Hello, little one," Lyra whispered softly. "You are not a symbol, not a tool, not a joke. You are life, and you are loved more than I can ever explain." Wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his presence a steady warmth. "We've done it," he said. "We've made our own family, and no one, no empire, no fleet, no law can take that from us." Lyra looked down at the baby, tears streaming freely. She realized that the council, which had discarded her as infertile and insignificant, had underestimated something far more powerful than bloodlines: love, resilience, and the human capacity to fight for what matters. Humanity had given her a chance to flourish where her own world had it, and she had taken it fully, courageously, and triumphantly. Hours later, as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky, Lyra held the child close while prepared a small meal. The house, humble and imperfect, felt like the safest place in the galaxy. Here they could live, laugh, and grow together. The Empire's judgment could not reach them, for they had something stronger than fear. They had chosen life, love, and each other. Lyra whispered to the baby again, her voice trembling with joy. "You came to me when I was broken, when I was discarded, and now you are our miracle. Together, we will show the galaxy that even the smallest life, born in love and courage, can shine brighter than any empire's rules." Kissed her forehead gently. "You are incredible," he said. "The empire will learn one day that life and courage cannot be controlled. They can only be admired or feared." Lyra smiled softly, placing the child against her chest once more. The glow of the newborn seemed to mirror the hope she felt inside. In that small room, surrounded by human warmth and quiet determination, the princess who had been sent away as a joke realized the truth. She had returned not as a victim, but as a mother, a protector, and a force no one could deny. And as the day broke fully, casting light across the world, Lyra and their child sat together, a small family that had the galaxy. She felt complete, unshakable, and filled with an endless sense of possibility. For the first time in her life, Princess Lyra understood the true power of humanity: hope, love, and the courage to stand for life itself. The Empire could send fleets, command armies, and demand obedience, but it could never take what they had created. They could never take a family built on courage, choice, and love. And in that truth, Lyra finally smiled freely, knowing the galaxy had witnessed the rise of something greater than any empire: life unbroken, unstoppable, and glorious. HFY